is Barbara Cooper. I'm the chair of the Fidel Democrats, and I want to thank you all for coming. This is a wonderful turnout, and I think it's going to be a really interesting and exciting meeting. And we have the press here too. Nicholas Johnson from the Anachrist American. Thank you. And I'd like to start the meeting with an acknowledgement. We, the Fidelgo Democrats, acknowledge that we gather on indigenous land, the traditional territory of the Coast Salish people, specifically the Samish and Swinomish people, and pay our respects to elders past, present, and future. If you are not on the mailing list and would like to be, please sign in at the back and put down your email and phone number. It's on the table in the back there. And I like to remind people to write so we can read your handwriting. Okay, the front door is locked of this library. If you want to leave, you have to leave through that door or this one here. And if you want to use the bathrooms, it's out in the lobby there. And this is a favor to please turn off your cell phones and watches. And I'm going to check mine as well. There are lovely cookies in the back. Thank you, Linda. Yes. There's also some decaf coffee and teas and water. The Fidelgo Democrats are an independent democratic association with a focus on education. I want to remind everyone we are not a PAC. We cannot endorse candidates or contribute to their campaigns. We do invite Democratic candidates to talk about issues and legislation. The local elections are over, but if you want to contribute to candidates or get involved in their campaign, we encourage you to go to their websites. The meeting is being recorded by Rita Sullivan, and if you're on our mailing list, you will get the link to the YouTube channel. I want to let you know we do not charge dues, but we will pass the hat at some point. Just to give you a quick sample, this year we gave $1,000 to the Anacortes Family Center, which was most of our treasury. And if you're not familiar with them, please go to their website. They do a wonderful job. And every couple of months, a group of us do the brick dinner at the Presbyterian Church, which prepares dinner for anyone who shows up on that Sunday. So, anyway, that's the things that we do. And we're keeping our money local this year. Our meeting is Tuesday evening, the second Tuesday of the month. And our next meeting is March 10th. We're having somebody, the executive director of the Northwest Progressive Institute, is going to be coming up from Redmond to talk about resisting authoritarianism. And there'll be time for questions. If you're interested in finding out more about this group, their website is nwprogressive.org. And the man's name that's coming is Andrew Bellinenu. I'm sure I'm pronouncing it incorrectly, but we'll find out next month. Now, I was going to, where's Sarah? There's Sarah. I was going to turn this over and have Sarah make a few announcements like you did last time about the rallies and stuff.
Oh, really?
Do you want to? Surprise!
Not as much going on this time.
Recite after me. Sundays at noon. Wednesdays at 3. That's mostly what's going on. We are looking forward with Indivisible to March 28th. I hope you all have that on your calendar. That's the next big No Kings national event. Last time we had 1,800 people in little old Anacortes. We will probably get quite a few more this time around. And then, so that'll be 11 to 12 on March 28th, which is a Saturday. And then we'll all go over to Mount Vernon, where they will be doing their rally from 2 to 4. So we'll pitch in over there as well. So, thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Sarah, for doing and organizing and getting this going. It was really very needed and very appreciated. And just as an aside, I mean, the Anacortes Stand Up group did a fundraising drive before Christmas, and they raised $7,500 that they donated to the Anacortes Family Center. So people are very generous. Thank you all. This is just something, if there are newsletters from the Skagit Democrats and the Whidbey Island Democrats, so if you're interested in either of them, just go online and get the papers. They're really full of really a lot of information about what's going on. And we also encourage you to join the groups and organizations that you're interested in helping. So many of the groups need help. And if you have time and energy, do it. Before we move on, I'd like to introduce, or have them introduce themselves. All elected officials appointed. There's someone here from the Climate Committee that was just formed, just appointed. Thank you. It was some impressive credentials, so thank you. If there are any Democratic Party officials, including PCOs, any elected officials, that please, raise your hand and be recognized. Okay. Thank you. Okay. What I'm going to do is introduce the speakers, so we have plenty of time to do that. I am going to start with Joe Burns, who's new to us, and thank you. And I kind of want to tell you how he became the county commissioner. 3 candidates were nominated by the Skagit County Democrats for consideration by the board of the Skagit County Commissioners. And so the 2 commissioners, Wesson, and Browning, interviewed 3 candidates, and then they voted to nominate Joe Burns. And Joe is going to serve until the November general election, and then he will be at a 4-year term if he wins the next election. So he's going to have to do a little bit of work. Besides all the work, besides all the work of the job itself. He was a Sedro-Woolley City Council member representing Ward 6, and taught automotive shop classes at the Sedro-Woolley High School. I don't know if you're still on the boards of the Helping Hands Food Bank and served on.
We got another month and a half, I think.
Oh, okay. Sedro-Woolley Lions Club president. He's worked with the Sedro-Woolley City Council and is focused on improving public safety and community health, including support for North Star, the community court system, and creation of the police department K-9 program. He's especially proud of his work supporting business development through the creation of the American Rescue Act Plan funded grant program for exterior infrastructure improvement in Sedro-Woolley. And if you want to talk to him about anything official, there's a website. Go to commissioners at co.skagit.wa.us, or you can give them a call. So that is our new commissioner. Now the other person is Ryan Walters, our new mayor. And I'll be quick because I think a lot of us know Ryan, or some of us do. After graduating from law school, Ryan joined the Skagit County Prosecutor's Office, where he served for nearly a decade before moving to management of the County Planning Department as its Assistant Director, then to Samish for Planning Director. And for the last 3 years, Ryan has been in private practice, working with local governments to improve their permit process and municipal codes. He is the principal author of the forthcoming state guideline on how to process building and land use permit applications. He ran for city council in 2011, motivated by opposition to a proposed water bottling plant and misguided proposed developments in the middle of residential areas. He has his first child, he and his wife recently, Allison, and they live in Old Town. So, thank you, Maya. So I am going to let them sit up front and turn it over to them.
All right, she basically covered it. I think we're good, right?
So I brought a power.
Okay, great.
I want to hear Justin on power first.
Oh, okay, we could start that way.
That works for me. You know, I've been sitting all day. If you don't mind, I'll stand over here. Is it gonna be a problem for?
Okay, no.
Okay.
Just grab the mic.
Yeah, we sit a lot in meetings, so I'm happy to stand for a little bit. So, she covered a little bit of it. I'm Joe Burns, I'm the new Skagit County Commissioner. Prior to that, 4 years on the Sedro-Woolley City Council. I'd actually just won election to another term. I was a Sedro-Woolley High School auto shop teacher for a semester. Didn't get to stay there very long. It's not a job I could do while being a county commissioner, but I really enjoyed it. You know, my favorite thing was seeing that like aha moment when the kids figured something out. I always told them that I can't teach you everything about cars, but I can teach you critical thinking and how to figure out a problem. And so that's what I really worked on, trying to make sure that the beginning classes knew how to fix the beater that they were inevitably going to buy, and in the advanced classes, how to help their friends fix the serious problems with those cars. So that's what I kind of worked on there. Prior to that, for 9 years, I ran the auto shop for Rally Auto Sales. I was a general auto mechanic, specialized in electrical wiring. I was the guy who could find that weird electrical gremlin that made you trade in your car. We'd pick it up from the auction and I'd figure it out. I would literally take cars to dealerships sometimes with a problem list. I'd say, okay, so I can't program the computer, so I installed a new one. I need you to program this, and then I'll take it back and I'll do the A, B, and C and bring it back for the other part. Because unfortunately, you can never fix everything unless you work for Ford, Chevy, Dodge. They make it so you really have to have their services. I did everything from the customer service, scheduling, as I said, the electrical work. I really enjoyed the work in government. Getting into city council was not something I did willingly. My friend Jermaine Cornegay worked on me for a solid 2 years. We met at a Rick Larson event, and we just happened to sit next to each other. We were in Bellingham, and I said, I don't know what I want to do. It's 2017. I want to get involved in politics somehow, and I'm just trying to figure it out. And she turns and looks at me after the meeting and says, have you ever considered running for city council? Absolutely not. Not gonna happen. She didn't take no for an answer. Less than 6 months after my first son was born, who's now 5, she called me and said, you know, one more try. Filing week is in 2 weeks. We run. And so I said, give me a few minutes. And I sat there in my hammock outside. It was during COVID, so I was enjoying the fresh air by myself. And I thought, you know, I want to make this a better world for my little boy.
Sure.
And I didn't have a dad growing up. My dad bailed on us when I was 2. And so I said, you know, I want to be the man I wished my father was, and part of that is standing up for something and trying to really build a sense of community. So it gave me that opportunity is what I realized. So I said yes. I knocked on a lot of doors. I got outspent like 8 to 1, and I still won by about 20%. It was a great feeling. It made me realize that I was actually able to connect with the people. You know, it's a working class neighborhood. We had a lot in common. We might not always share our political ideology, but when it came down to the local stuff, we all want a safe neighborhood for our kids to grow up in, for our families to age. Like, these are the things that are important to us. So it worked out well for me there. I enjoyed getting into government. She mentioned the ARPA-funded Community Development Grant Program. When I first moved into Woolley, I noticed that downtown was a little sparse. There was a lot of empty business fronts, and I said, what can we do about that? So we started meeting with local business owners, and we asked, why do you think these businesses are empty? What can we do to be more welcoming? What can we do to make this a better place to do business so that we have that tax base? And they kept telling us in different ways, the appearance of the city could use a shine. So I started fishing around with staff. What can we do financially that, you know, to help boost things? And because we had those ARPA funds during COVID, it gave us a bigger opportunity than we might have normally had. We were able to develop a grant program that allowed businesses to apply for a grant to beautify the outside of their buildings, that helped raise the appeal of the city as a whole, made it look a little bit nicer. And then the business owners who didn't apply for the grant kind of looked around and went, wow, I should have applied for that. Now my business is looking a little shabby, I'm gonna have to clean it up a little bit. And so we started seeing more infill in downtown, and now they're, almost every storefront is full last time I checked, and I really appreciated seeing that. I like seeing small towns thrive and the mom and pop shops doing good. So that's something I really enjoyed doing with the city council. When I got done with my last election there in November, my name was put in for the county commissioner, and I was picked, as she said, one of 3 people by the Skagit County Democrats to be put forward. I'd been endorsed by them for the last 2 elections. During the process, I went and I met with as many people as I could to understand what I was getting into. I still realized that I had no idea what I was getting into. There were a lot of meetings. I feel like a ping pong ball sometimes, just bouncing back and forth. But I really enjoyed it so far. I've only been in the job for less than a month, but it seems to be going well. I'm fully committed. I stepped away from being a high school auto shop teacher and decided that this is what I was going to do full time. If I was going to do it, I had to do it right and devote all my time to it. It's important to me that in a role like this, I do everything I can to be successful. It's not just for me and my family, it's for all of you, for our community, for their future, our grandkids. I want to make sure this is a beautiful place for them to live and to grow up. That means thinking further down the road, looking past the choice that I have to make right now and how it affects the future. That's something that I always try to be mindful of, is that everything has a cascade effect. You know, if I do A and B, what's going to be happening down there when we get to Z? And I try to be mindful of that, and that everything has an effect on our community, sometimes positive, sometimes negative. But I always try to think about the outcome and can talk to people who are affected by it so that I can make better decisions. I realize that it's impossible for me to know everything an engineer knows or that our finance director knows, but I can pick their brains. I can rely on people who have good information. I'm really happy about the climate committee that we have forming. We had people with stellar resumes apply for that. I was really impressed with the people who came out for it. A majority of the people on there are either scientists or people who worked on environmental. Someone studied glaciers, another person had worked for the United Nations. This was a really wonderful list of people. We have individuals from First Nations that are on there as well. And so I really appreciate the group that stepped up to get involved in that. And I hope we get some really good science and information out of it so that we can work into the future to try to be more responsible with the resources that we have here and what we can do to help protect this place for future generations. Now, I know that in the invitation, it actually said that I was here to talk about my priorities. And as I said, I've been in the job less than a month. I'm still developing my priorities. You know, when you run for an office, you go out and you have tons of meetings like this and you ask everybody what they care about, and you develop your platform from that. Well, I didn't get to do that. I kind of have a crash course right now. And so I have the things that are really important to me, like the North Star program. That's something I worked on as a city council member. There's a behavioral health center outside Cedro-Woolleyah, or I should say just at the city limits, that is a spectacular asset to our communities. We are about to open another portion of that. I think it's another 32 beds. This is gonna have a spot for people who are in crisis to get dropped off there and get the care that they need. Because if you drop somebody off the emergency room, they tend to be out of there in a half hour if they're in mental health crisis. But this would be a facility to where they could stay a little longer, get the help that they need, and start getting stabilized so that they can have a better future, better opportunities. I really appreciate that, because when I went out and talked with our first responders, they tell me, I don't care how long I have to spend with somebody to try to talk them down, I wanna help them, I wanna see them, be healthier, be in a better state, but it's really saddening when I have to take them to the ER and then I get called back in an hour because they're in crisis and it's escalated. And it just keeps going from there until something goes wrong. And it's really sad to see. And so that was one of the big asks that I got from our police and fire, is that they really just wanted someplace to help take people who needed help where they'd actually get it. And so I'm hopeful that that is really what we're developing through North Star. The county's budget, in case you didn't notice in the news, is not spectacular. I have not walked into a great fiscal situation, but I want to do what I can to help. My goal is that we get the county into the black and that we are fiscally solvent within the next couple of years. We're not drawing down reserve funds, but building them up. That's going to be challenging. Unfortunately, there's going to be cuts because each year government loses ground financially. Inflation always outpaces any tax increase they're able to take. Even if they took that 1% every year, the last 5 years, inflation has outpaced it. So you lose buying power, you lose the ability to keep up with the cost of wages, with the cost of buying everything. So those are some of the challenges that we're up against fiscally. But I am optimistic about our ability to overcome that and try to find a better way forward. Because once we solve that issue, it gives us a chance to do more big things and help people and do a better job as a community. Because I recognize that as long as we're running a deficit, it makes it really tough to do those things. Now, the main reason I really wanted to meet with you, besides just talking with you and meeting those of you that I hadn't already met, is I want to hear about your concerns. Because that's really, for me, what's important, is finding out what each community is concerned about. I know a lot about Sedro-Woolley. I don't know as much about Anacortes and the issues that you're facing. I've gone over to Gwyneth and I've met with people about the ferry. I did come here and meet with PCOs during the process for appointment, but I want to hear more from you. So whether it's you reaching out to me individually, or if it's okay to have a little Q&A today, I'm happy to just hear what you have to say.
Okay, I'm gonna ask if anybody has a question, I'll bring the microphone to them. And I was gonna ask you to put the mic closer to your mouth.
Sorry.
So, does anyone have any questions? Please just raise your hand and I'll bring the mic to you.
And I must be out of practice if I need the mic, because my auto students used to ask me to not use the microphone because that's too loud.
They could hear your room.
Yeah, they could hear well, I guess.
So hi, I'm Betsy Braun and I'm a resident of Anacortes. A shop teacher at our high school can't afford to live here. What are your thoughts about what we can do to increase the housing that we need, that people were very passionately requesting in our comp plan update, to get that back in our community?
So when it comes to inside the Anacortes city limits, I do have to defer to this gentleman in your city council a little bit, but I will speak to it because, you know, in Sedro-Woolley we ran against this problem as well. Everybody loves their community the way it is. They don't want it to change, but they do want houses to be cheap and they want their grandkids to live there, which is a challenge because that's not really how it works out. And so I have advocated for building responsibly and following the Growth Management Act as far as density allocations, trying to make sure that we are being responsible with what land we have, to make sure that we have room for everyone and we can help bring prices down. The thing is that if that doesn't happen in the counties north and south of us and all the cities in Skagit County and all the cities in the counties north and south of us, the prices aren't actually going to come down. The availability is not going to open up because people are just going to move to different locations. So it's kind of going to take a regional approach to this. I'm hoping that through one of the boards I've recently been assigned to, we can work on trying to talk about what we can do to make that better. It's all the counties north of Seattle, essentially. I might be overselling what they do, but it's a hope of mine that we can start alleviating that issue. Because I know that most people cannot get out of high school, get a job, and find a place to live with one of their friends if they want to. It's just not possible. And when you have someone who's working full-time for a school, which is normally a pretty good job with benefits, but you can't afford a place, that's a problem. And I agree with you there. it's been a real challenge in Cedar Woolley when I was on city council, in part because nobody wanted it to change, but it's recognizing that we have to make room for our neighbors to make sure that everyone has an opportunity. So I hope that we can work on that in the future, and county working with cities to see what we can do there. There are allocations with the Growth Management Act as far as population expectations and growth, and so I'd have to review the comp plan for Anacortes to understand it better, but that's what I know so far.
Are there any other questions?
Where are you? Oh, there. Hi. Hi, Melinda Casey, I'm from Anacortes. To your knowledge, is there any warehouses that are trying to be bought up for ICE to come into around us?
Not to my knowledge. It's probably not something that they send me an email about.
No.
If I were them, I wouldn't, but no, not to my knowledge. And I would discourage them from doing so.
Well, I'm hoping Ferguson will too, you know.
That's what I was kind of expecting might
Yeah.
happen as well, because realistically, a county commissioner pushing back is,
Because they're really
False.
sneaking in.
yeah, as Governor Ferguson would.
Thank you.
On a similar theme, what plans do you have so far for thinking about protecting our elections office? As elections approach, do we have ideas about what might be needed?
So I actually was sitting in Sandy Perkins' office earlier today, just happened to catch me on the right day for that question. Right now, vigilant, but no apparent threat at this point. They are being mindful of security, cameras, things like that, and luckily there are police available if needed from Mount Vernon, and the sheriff's office also is just across the road there behind the courthouse. We're going to stay optimistic at this point that we are going to have a safe, fair election without issues, but my understanding is that there are some plans just in case, so. One of the things that we always want to be mindful of is to make sure that everybody feels that they have an opportunity to vote safely, so that's important to me.
I don't know why everybody doesn't get mail-in voting. I really don't.
Okay, hold on.
Commissioner, congratulations on the appointment.
Thank you, Board.
Just to refresh everybody's memory, that was a very contentious appointment, folks. There were 6 very qualified individuals, and Joe was selected as one of them. Anyway, congratulations. I know this is probably an unfair question for you, but any thoughts on balancing the budget? I know everybody is struggling with it, $10+ million, in the red, so to speak. Any comments on it?
Not a lot so far. I need to dive into the budget much deeper and get a good look at where our dollars are going. I can tell you just from my experience with government budgets, unfortunately, the individuals who work for the municipalities are always the highest cost column. So odds are it's going to be that which is cut at some portion. It's more being strategic about where that happens and trying to make sure that we're not eliminating services or causing issues with it. So it's gonna take more of a scalpel than a sledgehammer to work out the budget. That is something that I actually have penciled for Friday for me to start trying to look at the budget and understanding where we might be able to. Luckily, my office is right next to the finance director, but they didn't want to drown me alive, so they're slowly easing me in with all the information I have to know. So I'll get back to you, Valit, when I have something a little more solid.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I probably don't need the microphone. I actually have a comment and a question. Just a comment that the county health department that oversees licensing of small businesses and restaurants it'd be really nice if there's a little more, I don't know, oversight to see how some of their rules impact small businesses. So, that's a comment. Then my question is, you've only been in your job for a month, but with Skagit County at about 130,000 population, help me out here, do you think a 3-person commission is the right fit for us? You know, there was a charter campaign, how long ago was that? I'm curious, maybe you'll know more after saying, maybe we need more people.
Probably a little more time before I can tell you how it really works out, being so short time here. I know that when I've looked at Whatcom with the charter government, it didn't impress me how it's working out up there. No offense to Whatcom County. It's possible that sometimes it's the form, sometimes it's the individuals, but I have not explored it enough to give you a really solid opinion there. I do know that there's a real challenge here, because on the city council with 7 people, a couple of us could have a conversation and actually kind of work out some ideas, bounce things off of each other, where there was no judgment about it, you can just have a conversation. And sometimes you come up with an idea and you're like, wait, as soon as I said that, that's not great. You can't really do that with a 3-person commission, because you legally can't have a substantive conversation. When we talk, it's more like, hey, how are the kids? It's a sunny day. Isn't it great the Seahawks won? We can't talk about anything that we can actually vote on without a public meeting. And so I like the openness of the public meetings. I think it's deeply important that everybody gets to see what's going on in government. But there's less collaboration that comes with that, because everything is so formal. It's something I'm gonna learn to adjust to. I'm open to more ideas. I try to always be open to ideas. There's no bad idea in a brainstorm, is something I always like to tell people. So if you can show me a place where there's a 5-person commission and it's working beautifully, I'm open to looking at that. If you show me a 5-person commission and say, you know, I can't find one that's functional, maybe 3 really did work. But right now it's what we have, and it's unlikely to change in the imminent future. So I'm going to do my best to work with it.
Thank you.
How you doing, Joe?
Pretty good. Recent news was with the North Star 2 pulling out of it, and you being an ex-city council person will be intimately involved in that. What's the likelihood of them rejoining, and what would it take to get them to rejoin?
I think that it's unlikely they rejoin in the near future. Unfortunately, some people don't want to look beyond the bounds of their city or their community and think about people outside of it in the same way, or think about the ways we can work together. Pooling resources between cities and county makes it so that we have more to work with and a larger ability to make an impact. And unfortunately, not everyone sees it that way. They see it as if they keep their dollars there and they don't work outside of their city, that they think they can do more there. And I think that unfortunately that might need to play out before they realize that it's much more beneficial to work together and to try to do more. They're still going to be invited to the table. I hope that they continue to participate with North Star and that they see good work being done. I mean, the North Star Center is right there in Woolley. So I really hope that they do rejoin at some point. I voted for them to join. It's something I've supported for years and can see that Cedar Woolley doesn't have the funds to do all this on their own. And so I saw this as a great benefit to my community. I'm still going to champion it and hope that they rejoin at some point.
How can we help you when the election comes, the campaign?
So I'm going to be completely honest with you. I very much like to separate the campaigning from the electoral or the duties of the commissioner, and I was contacted through my official email, so I want to avoid my campaign tonight. It's part of me for respecting the office and the people that I serve, that I serve everyone. happy to have the conversation another night.
We like ethical behavior, thank you.
Thank you. I'm trying.
Nicholas Johnson, I don't usually speak in a public meeting, but I will. I'm just curious, I may be living under a rock, but have you already said whether you are planning to run? I know that's a campaign question, but I know it's pretty straightforward.
It is. So I have filed with the PDC for 2026. So yes, I do intend to run.
All right.
And throwing away my career as a high school water shop otherwise. So yeah.
Okay. We had some really, let me get away from that. We've had some really good questions, really appreciate it, but I think we want to move on and let Ryan do his presentation, and then if you think of other questions for Joe, you can ask him after Ryan does his presentations.
Thank you everyone for your time.
Well, thank you, Barbara, and thank you, Joe. Joe, a little bit of an electoral tip here. If you can pull it off, it's really good if you can get no one to run against you. Thank you all for inviting me here tonight. Unlike county commissioner seats, which are partisan, city council and mayor seats are nonpartisan. So I am very pleased to be here, glad to see you all. I'm always pleased to be here. However, if the Fidalgo Republicans invited me, I would also appear at their event. I'm still waiting for that invitation. But there's actually a page on the city website, go to mayor, and you can request a meeting for any civic group. You can also schedule 15 minutes with me, and if you're very lucky, you can get an extra 5. So I was asked to give you a little preview of what the city of Anacortes is going to be doing in 2026, and so that's the PowerPoint that I presented. And we'll, of course, have time for questions afterward. But to start us off, I want to give us a little bit of a backgrounder into municipal finance. And this is very much in line with the things Joe said about the situation that the county is in. It's a little bit different, and he can highlight any differences if you have questions for him. But in the city of Anacortes, we have a general revenue problem, and this is not unlike other cities. But it's important to highlight that this is a problem associated not with the entirety of the city, but with those departments that are funded by general revenue. So general revenues pay for these departments: cemetery and court, fiber and fire, library, museum, parks and the senior center, police, the planning department, the prosecutor's office. What's not on here is the mayor's office. Streets, including maintenance of your streets and sidewalks, and then the internal service departments, the departments that serve the other departments that are public facing. And the ones with the asterisk, for example, fiber, have significant other revenue sources. You pay a fee when you get municipal fiber, and so that is an additional revenue source other than general revenue. But when we say general revenue, we talk about the revenue that can be spent on anything and isn't shoehorned into a particular budget, which is what state law likes to do. So the sources of general revenue for the city are your property taxes, and that amounts to about 8.5 million. Your sales taxes that you pay inside the city limits, including your Amazon deliveries, so long as you get them delivered here inside the city limits, that's about 6 million. And then utility tax, which is a tax we charge on public and private utilities. So all in all, your general revenues are just these. Now we have a whole bunch of other revenue sources, and this presentation is not about that. It is about these, which are discretionary. We can spend them on anything, and you saw the slide that says what we currently spend them on. Now that's only about 17% of your property tax bill that feeds into that property tax amount there. Because the rest of your property tax bill goes to a bunch of different other places. And we hear a lot about property tax, and property taxes are too high, and all that. We understand. However, it's not because of the city that your property taxes are too high. So if you look at the pie chart, 23% of your property tax goes to the school district, 1% to the pool, 8% to Island Hospital, Island Health, 2% to the port, 30% is the state portion of the property tax, which is the state school levy. And then there's the city at 17%, and Farmland Legacy, which buys development rights off of farmland through the county program, 1%. The county as an entity gets 12%, and then the county's EMS levy is another 6% of the pie. So again, city is 17%. So if you pay $1,000 in taxes, it's only $170 that's going to the city. And that is the only amount that we have control over as well.
Wow.
Now, the city amount here of 17% has been going down, except for the levy lid lift for public safety that we did a couple of years ago. And for example, in 2012, it was 21%. So our share of the pie is getting smaller. That doesn't mean we're collecting less in tax though, which we'll show you here in a minute. But also, I had somebody in my office the other day saying, you know, the property taxes were so high in Anacortes they had to move to Mount Vernon. Well, we have a chart for that. The levy rate in Anacortes is 1.3. That wasn't me. The levy rate in Anacortes is 1.3. The levy rate in Mount Vernon is, sorry, this was last year, was 1.5. So 20 cents more than in Anacortes. Burlington was the lowest rate, but also Burlington for a long time was almost the highest sales tax per capita in the state, because you had 2 malls, you had Costco, you had Home Depot, so they were generating a lot of revenue from other sources. And then Cedar Woolley is fairly high. However, this is 2026 data. So Mount Vernon went from 1.5 to 2.25, which again is much higher than Anacortes. Anacortes does not charge the most property tax rate, and we are now 3rd of the 4 cities, where we were, well, we were 3rd before. So we're still 3rd. But we are a more distant 3rd compared to So also, you'll note, this is 2026 and this is 2025. So our total levy in 2025, the right column, was 8.5 million. In 2026, it's 8.7 million. And what's important to understand here is that when your property valuation goes up, the levy rate goes down, and the city does not collect any more tax, which is really difficult for a lot of people to accept because they see they're paying more tax. But that is largely because your valuation goes up higher and that tax goes to somewhere else, but it's not coming to the city. Our levy, this is 26, this is 25. I will put these on the same slide in future presentations. But our levy jumped up by $200,000, largely due to new construction. Because when new construction occurs, it gets added to the property tax levy. The only other way that property tax levy increases is we take a 1% increase each year, which is always less than inflation, as Joe mentioned. Or if the voters approve an increase in the levy, which voters did in 2023, and to my recollection, have never done for the city before. So, importantly about this whole property tax thing, the total amount of property tax revenue that the city is receiving is more or less fixed, with those exceptions I just said. So, new construction, that gets added. The city council can raise the total revenue amount by 1% each year. That's less than inflation. And then the voters can authorize an increased levy. Let's go to sales tax. So sales tax is 8.8% here, and for the translation, that's $8.80 of sales tax on a $100 purchase. The state collects $6.50 of that. The county gets 15 cents. The city gets 84 cents. I should have run this. Okay, no, I know what's happening here. Okay, so now this other remainder of the pie here, we need to explode so that you can see what that looks like. So the city gets another 20 cents of the sales tax that is dedicated to pavement management. It's our transportation benefit district, or as you see on some charts, TBD. which a lot of us have said, please stop putting on charts. Because what it is the pavement management allocation. We also collect 10 cent or 1/10 of 1% on affordable housing. That goes to the 3 projects that voters approved in 2020, 2 for the Housing Authority, 1 for the Family Center. We collect 1/10 of 1% or 10 cents on 100 for criminal justice. Public safety, that's a jail tax that actually comes to the city, but we more or less pass it through to the county for the jail. Skagit Transit is another chunk. There is a mental health sales tax that the county has levied, and then Skagit 911 gets a similar amount. All of that goes into that $1.31 on $100. So that's where your sales tax is going. And importantly, on that $100 purchase, the city's getting 84 cents. Now, if we look at property tax over time, the important thing here is that the levy in nominal dollars is increasing. It's increasing because of those exceptions, the 1%, the new construction, those kinds of things. And so if you look at it in nominal dollars, which is just the amount, it looks like it's increasing. And especially it increased in 2023 when we passed that public safety levy lid lift. However, we didn't just say, hey voters, send us more money. We said, hey voters, send us more money. In exchange, we are immediately going to spend it on 8 more firefighters and 5 more police, which we did. So it's not a net benefit to the balance sheet, except that we've added those public safety people. But that is in nominal dollars. If you look at it in real dollars, which are inflation adjusted, here in 1982 dollars, the absolute value doesn't matter so much as the relative value. You can see that it really has not increased even with new construction. New construction helped it keep up with inflation. But then when we started to get into more significant inflation post-pandemic, in inflation adjusted dollars, our property tax revenue went down. Now we brought it back up with the public safety levy lid lift, but we needed to spend that money. Similarly with sales tax over time in nominal dollars, sales tax is indexed to prices. It is a percentage on the price that you pay. So it fluctuates though with the economy. And so you can see it went up and down. But if we adjusted that for real dollars, you can see that it went up and down, but it didn't lose ground. So if we look at trade-offs on our 3 major tax sources, property tax is very stable. It basically can't decline, but it also does not keep up with inflation. Even when we had new construction and we had relatively low inflation over that period in the before times prior to the pandemic, it just barely kept up. And since then, it certainly has not, and that's why you see all these cities and counties in this position that we are. But also sales tax varies with the economy, so it does keep up with inflation, but it is not as stable. And then utility tax is a lot more complicated. So don't worry about that for the purpose of this chart. It goes up and down if the price of power goes up, if the price of telephone service goes up, but those vary a lot. So there's not as a consistent story. So again, our general revenue, the largest component of the pie is continuously shrinking in inflation adjusted dollars, and that is the source of the problem. Now you might say, oh, the city can't manage its budget. Okay, well, you're entitled to that opinion. But it's not a matter of overspending. What it is a matter of is revenues decreasing in a way that is relatively unexpected and inconsistent with historical norms. And that's that significant increase in inflation post-pandemic. So this all yielded last year the layoff of almost 10% of our staff. We deleted from the budget nearly 20 positions, and we have almost 250 at our height. So that was a significant cut. It was basically unprecedented in the recent history of the city. We generally have not had to do layoffs. Even in 2008, when the county laid off a lot of people, we at the city of Anacortes did manage to not do that. So it was a very impactful thing on the elected officials, city council members, and myself on the city council. Wasn't really our choice, but we did ratify that approach because there weren't a lot of great options. We also really do not want that to happen again. It is very expensive to lay off staff. If you intend to rehire them, you will waste a lot of money laying them off and then hiring new people and then retraining them. It's highly undesirable. The staff are what make the city function. If you want all of those things on one of those first slides that I showed you that we provide, we need staff to provide those. So it's really not a great option to lay off staff, and in some cases we don't even have the option of laying off staff.
Is that what happened with the librarians?
Yes.
Between those four?
Yeah. So I came into office on January 1 and I laid out a three-part approach to how we're going to try to deal with this problem. So first we're going to conserve. And again, if you would like us to conserve money to get us out of this problem, I got to tell you, that's not going to work. Because if the revenue is continuously declining, conserving buys us time. And that's good, but it's not a full solution. But we are working on that. The second part of this approach is reform. There are a lot of things that we need to do within the city to be more efficient, to do things better, and to enable more economic growth. And the third prong here is invest, specifically targeted at getting more economic growth, because economic growth yields more sales tax, and sales tax grows with the economy. Now in the past, if sales tax really were growing gangbusters, it could make up for the lost property tax. But if it's not growing fast enough, it can't make up for the lost property tax. And we are fairly property tax dependent. It was the largest slice of the pie. That's not where we need to be. So a couple components of each of these three strategies. I issued an executive order the first week of January instructing staff to cut expenses, find ways to save money, suggest ways to save money, and do a variety of things. You can find the executive order on the mayor's website. We are switching cell phone carriers from AT&T to Verizon. This is not an advertisement for Verizon, but it is going to save us $100,000. We're looking at other money-saving measures across the board. You might have noticed on the city website, there used to be a little chat bot that you could interact with, and you could ask it questions, and it largely didn't have the answer. That was costing us $10,000 a year, but we terminated that. So again, this buys us time, but it's really important because we need time to figure out the rest of these strategies. In terms of reform, we are looking at overall that our general objective is to reduce our dependence as a portion of the pie on property tax. So we're looking at revising our fees for 100% cost recovery. We're going to be revising fees at the cemetery. We're going to be revising franchise fees that people pay to cut the street. We're going to be looking at all of our fees across the board, because if we are providing a service and we are not achieving 100% cost recovery, that means all the other taxpayers are helping pay for that service provided to one person. So we're going to try to do that. Now there are some areas where we may want to be very deliberative and deliberately subsidize a service. Our recreation programs, which are important for kids and families, might be one of those areas, but we are going to do that in a deliberative fashion, not just let it happen. We are looking at budget accountability measures across all departments. We have a new monthly budget monitoring tool that we are going to roll out for departments. We are also looking at budget restructuring, so it's a little easier to see where the money goes. Just as an example, if the Parks Department is building something in 1 year, then the budget goes up. And then if they're not building something the next year, the budget goes down. So if you look at the budget from year to year, it's got these big spikes. Well, that doesn't help you if you're trying to look at the budget from year to year. So if we pull the capital projects out and put it in a different department, different fund, then we can compare from year to year the Parks Department or another department's operating expenses. And so some simple things like that may be able to really help us out in doing the real work of budgeting and also communicating it to the public. And then finally, improving permit performance is a real key aspect of reform, and I'll talk a little bit more about that in a minute. On the investment side, we are looking at paving South Commercial Avenue. Now, importantly, South Commercial Avenue is not our road, and if you talk to anybody who the road belongs to, the state, you might mention that you would like them to kick in, something. So we're down in Olympia asking for that, and we, also have it's probably in excess of a $3 million project. We do have that reserved transportation benefit, revenue that we can use for that. But we are also currently using that for ordinary street maintenance. So we're gonna have to figure out when we actually advance this project, but it's one that we think is important. When we, in the 20-teens, 2014, 16, somewhere in there, paved North Commercial Avenue, we did start to see investment in our downtown. And I can't tell you for sure that that was a causal relationship, but I think at least in part it was. And so we're hoping that by paving South Commercial, we will also see investment on South Commercial. More business, more economic activity, more sales tax will help us out financially. We're also working on an event center, and I've got some slides about that. Same thing. We have reserved revenue that can't be spent on other things, and we're gonna spend that dollars investing in the infrastructure of our community that we expect will yield results. More lodging tax nights, more economic activity, more catering, more shoppers downtown. We're very hopeful that that will generate the economic activity that we need to see. We're working on building out fiber, and I have told the fiber division they need to get people connected to fiber as fast as humanly possible. You might have seen that we are working on a downtown streetscape plan. Council made that investment a while back, but we are finishing that up, and that is not intended to yield really expensive measures. It is intended to yield ideas and brainstorms that will hopefully be implemented relatively inexpensively and get even more people downtown. And just as an example, the full-service restaurant category is a very strong generator of sales tax. Where are those restaurants? They're downtown. So it is very important that we make that happen and that we support our downtown. One of the first things I did was hire a lobbyist, which is relatively inexpensive, and if we are able to achieve some significant contributions from the legislature for a couple of these projects, that will be well worth it. We haven't done that in the past, so we'll see. And of course, we are working on seeking external funds from a variety of sources, grants, those kinds of things. What do we expect to see in 2026? First of all, in case you missed the first part of the presentation, there's going to be a focus on finance. But my second most important goal is permitting reform. I've done a lot of work in this area. The City of Anacortes has recently kind of gone downhill in terms of permitting performance, and that has affected a lot of building around the city. It has affected, assumedly, some business construction and economic activity. So we are going to get that figured out, and you should expect to see more on that quite soon. We're also going to see more work on our capital facilities planning. I've been banging this drum for about a decade. We really still have not gotten there, but we do have new staff that I think are going to be very interested in this, and we're looking at some new software to help this out. We have talked about the city's operating budget and how important that is, but if you really want to bankrupt a city, just ignore all of our maintenance obligations, all of our capital facilities, and then we will really be in a world of hurt. So what we're trying to achieve here is effective planning, demonstrate we know what conditions are of all the buildings that we have, maintain those buildings and facilities. We have a lot of infrastructure in the city. A lot of it we never talk about and you never hear about. Pump stations galore. So we've got to have a handle on all of that. In the planning department, they're going to be working principally on the critical areas ordinance update this year. We don't expect that is a really large update because we relatively recently completed that, but we are obligated to do a review of it alongside the comprehensive plan, and our deadline is the end of 2026. Importantly, I'm going to instruct the planning department that they find ways to streamline the process without affecting the environmental outcomes. We want to achieve the same level of protection without employing as many biologists to do as many studies as we have. We're going to do a better job at communication, both internal and external. We're gonna do a better job at communication between the mayor and council. We're gonna do a better job at communicating with the public. So you'll see improvements in social media, you'll see improvements on the website, some of which have already been deployed. And you will also see a new approach for the A-Town magazine. Now, how many people read cover to cover the A-Town magazine? Okay, pretty good number. So there is no budget for the A-Town magazine this year. So we are going to have to figure out how to do that magazine or something else with almost no money to do it. So we're looking at options. We know it's important. We know it's a good way of communicating long-form stuff to people, but we are going to have to do it much, much cheaper. And then finally, we are going to have an entire city connected to municipal fiber this year. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean your house will be connected, but the street in front of your house will be. And then we will be continuing to roll out those connections to your premises as quickly as we can. There have been some personnel changes. First of all, we are going to get a new Ward 1 City Council member. For the last 14 years, somebody else has been the Ward 1 City Council member. And we are in the process right now of selecting a new one. There's an article in the paper today, or on the website at least, there's 5 candidates that City Council decided to move forward. Unfortunately, City Council makes that decision, not the mayor, and I'm very hopeful that Council does not deadlock in a tie. We had our administrative services director leave, and I would have loved to have refilled that position, but we need to make some hard choices, so we decided to delete that position. Instead, because administrative services supervised fiber, we brought back the fiber manager who had retired. So we are achieving some savings there, and we are also getting somebody who can definitely run the fiber division, which is very important to me. You know, if your water gets turned off, I imagine that eventually you'll call, but if your fiber goes out. So we are going to make sure that we are doing a good job there. Also, last night, council confirmed my appointment of a new public works director, because our public works director left last fall. We've had an interim in that time, and I appointed the interim, who is also the city engineer. So that is done. We are going to be also working, as a general matter, on a lot of upskilling and training of our staff, especially with respect to IT. There's a lot of software that we own that we don't necessarily all know how to use to the best of our ability, and there's nobody in charge of training, so we're going to make that happen. We need to be more efficient, we need to use the software to do some of the things that we need to do. Usually people ask about capital projects because they're very visible and maybe they are coming to a neighborhood near you. First of all, we are going to complete 12th and Commercial Avenue this year. And if you want, I can talk more about 12th and Commercial Avenue. But I imagine there might be some Q&A about that, so I'll just skip over it for now. There will be a pedestrian crossing over Q Avenue at about Safeway. We've got a federal grant that is paying for almost all of that. Yeah, it is really a pretty high priority project. We would have gotten it done last year, but it takes a while to process all these federal grant requirements. We are also looking at a pedestrian crossing over D Avenue at 23rd Street. We got a petition from a number of 12-year-olds asking for you know, a way across D Avenue at the top of the hill. It's really not good enough to go all the way down to the bottom of the hill and use the new crosswalks. Similarly, we also got a petition from a number of 70-year-olds asking for a pedestrian crossing at Storvik Park across 32nd. And so we're working on that one as well. And then there's also a Tommy Thompson Trail connection, which is pretty minor, but you may notice that. Importantly, the D Avenue at 23rd and also the 32nd are going to be paid for out of general revenue. So remember, streets was on that list of departments that get paid for out of general revenue. So that's a project that I will put in front of council to decide. Because it's actually not in the budget. Public Works thought they were going to get it done last year, but they didn't. And they didn't roll it over into the 2026 budget, so it's unbudgeted. So council's gotta make a decision if they wanna move it forward or not. I think both of those projects are important, I think probably council does too. But they also will need to take from our reserves to fund those projects. And as we get further along in the year, I think those decisions are gonna get harder and harder. So, I got a slide here about how you can help. And it doesn't just mean write checks. You're also gonna see expansion of the Depot Plaza, thanks to a grant from Skagit County. We are getting some money to expand the brick paver area at the depot. It'll come all the way back around the backside, around the Preston. It'll be quite a nice improvement, and it will really help support the farmer's market. We also got a check from MJB for $1 million as a result of a vacation that we did in their area. That will allow us to move the restroom that is currently at 22nd and QR there, just north of the roundabout, to by the skate park. And by move the restroom, I mean demolish that restroom.
Thank you.
And build an entirely new restroom at the skate park. And we'll also be able to do the parking lot at the skate park, because we weren't able to do that as part of the skate park project because we didn't have quite enough money at that time. Parks is also working on a Heart Lake shoreline restoration project, which is also a parking lot. We should probably put that in the title. But it's a pretty exciting project, and there's information on the website. And then the Weems Channel Trail, we are continuing to work on that. You're not gonna see more development of the trail during 2026, but you're gonna see more planning for that during 2026, because in 2027, we are gonna get $340,000 from the state for that project. And then the biennium after that, we're gonna get 3.3 million. So, my goal is to be ready.
Yeah.
So that when that money becomes available, we are ready to spend it and ready to actually make some progress and eventually get that thing connected. And then the Port City Event Center, as I mentioned, and South Commercial Avenue paving. That's a question mark, for at least for 2026. You can now go to amherstlaw.gov/projects, and you can see a project page about each of these projects with a contact person in case you have questions. If you go to those pages and you think that there's some content there that isn't there, that should be there, let that person know, let me know, we will update those project pages. Because everybody always has questions about the projects. We haven't always had information on the website about the projects. Now we do. Our goal is to have that, it's a top level menu, you can get to it from any page. We're hopeful that that helps answer some questions. Here's a rendering of the new event center.
Ooh, oh, nice.
And this is an aerial shot looking from the north east. So if you zoom out from this, you would eventually zoom past the Preston and then the connected Depot Plaza.
Nice.
It's about a $9 million project. We have so far received $250,000 from the federal government as a result of work by Congressman Larson. We are asking for $500,000 in this legislative session from the state. We'll also be asking for some money from Skagit County. From the .09 Economic Development Fund, do you need a pen to write this down? From the .09 Economic Development Funds that the county has made available, including for, they have been very generous with us actually, including for the Depot Plaza this year, for the lodging tax money that Skagit County has been squirreling away. And then we will be bonding the rest of the construction of this facility and paying for that bond service with lodging tax money, which has been our plan all along. We are working out the mechanics of that. We just need a bit more to make that work and push us over the top. Okay, so how you can help. First of all, you can volunteer for a board or commission. And I've got some web addresses here. You can find it on the website, but if you just remember the 3-digit number, you can also get right to the pages. We have a number of boards and commissions. There are, I think, 75 seats or something like that that I'll need to appoint over the next 4 years. A lot of them are filled, but don't worry about that. If you see something that interests you, fill out the application and we'll put it in our database. And then when something opens up, we will draw upon that. You can also attend a city council or other meeting. If you go to this page, you get a list of all the meetings. City council meetings have video, they've got packets, they've got public comment opportunities, they've got a lot of stuff. Some of the other meetings have less information, but you can find out when they all are. You can attend all of those meetings, which are all public. It is a great way to find out what's going on and get involved. You can also watch it on TV. You can watch it on the YouTube channel. I think we are doing a pretty good job at getting this information out there. However, maybe locating it, we could do a little bit better job at, and so we'll work on that. And then you can submit public comments. So for any particular meeting, you can submit public comments to the city council, and we invite that. If you go to this page and read the instructions about public comments, you can submit them online. Or you can attend a meeting, you get 3 minutes to submit a public comment. If there's a public hearing on the agenda, you can attend, and then at the time of that public hearing, you can submit your comments. So there's a lot of opportunities to do this. And then you can also email your elected officials directly. So if you go to this page, you can find all your elected officials, get their email addresses, possibly their phone numbers. I think their phone numbers are on there. You can figure out a way to reach out. And if you go to the mayor page, you can book 15 minutes with me, you can request a presentation for your group, you can find out about the coffees at the senior center that I have scheduled, and I'll be working more on scheduling some more events. So, that's what I have for you tonight. I hope you found it interesting, even the first slides about the budget. And I am willing to answer whatever questions you have.
Okay.
Within reason.
If anyone has any questions, please raise your hand and I will bring the microphone over.
You kind of closed your talk with the event center, and it was my understanding that the port had a major involvement in that, and I'm curious how that relates to the city's involvement and how you work things out between those two entities.
Yeah, the port and the city have been working on an event center for a while. Actually, the first event center at Cap Santa Marina was apparently envisioned in 1979. And if you go to the event center page on our website, we have a photo of that. It was going to be 500,000 square feet. So this will be smaller. So there have been so many efforts over the years, but back in 2016, we put into our city tourism promotion plan that we needed to be saving 25% of our lodging tax revenue every year for a future capital project, and that we needed to be planning for eventual replacement of the port's transit shed. Now the port telegraphed for many years that they were gonna return that to a commercial marine industrial use, and they did. So it wasn't a surprise to us. I mean, we all felt sad about it, but we accepted it. And we also knew, we've got to replace it. So the port had done a bunch of work on replacement of the transit shed with an event center. And this is an iteration of that. In 2024, I think it was, myself and Councilmember McDougall and Councilmember Christine Cleland McGrath went to the port commissions and said, look, we've been fumbling around at this event center thing. We have a new idea. How about the city actually participate in it? And if the port can provide the ground. We think it's important to connect people to the waterfront. And there's not a lot of opportunity to do that. You see people drive to Seafarers Memorial Park at lunch and just sit there and eat lunch looking at the water because people feel a significant connection to the water. But unless you are fortunate enough to own a house on the water, you may not have a lot of good access to it. You can drive out to Washington Park, there are some places. But, so we thought that was an important component, and we have talked, again, for 15 plus years about connecting the marina to downtown. And generally that conversation revolved around 9th Street. So the location of this facility at 9th and R is also a reflection of that long-running conversation. So the project is to be owned and operated by the port on land owned by the port. The construction is to be funded by the city, and we have a 30-year operating agreement between the two entities that spells out exactly how that's going to work and how it's going to be run, not only for tourist events and weddings that help generate revenue, but also for the benefit of the community, including all the nonprofits that host dinners and other events that generate $3 to $4 million a year in our community for Fidalgo Dance Works, for Family Center, for Schools Foundation. Those are a really important component of this whole project as well.
Thank you. Hey Ryan, on a earlier slide, I did notice that you had farmland legacy as 1%, which isn't really farmland legacy, but it's what we've called it. You know, it's conservation future dollars. It's like calling a flying disc a frisbee. Everybody knows what a frisbee is, right? But as we get diminishing amounts of farmland, and the farmland legacy program's been an excellent program. But you know, as a parks director for the county, I've never had an acquisition dollar. We're adding 83 acres to Big Rock this year, you know, and that ribbon cutting is happening on March 17th, or that commemoration, but it's only because we've gotten grants and worked with the Land Trust and worked with all these partners. A little bit of those monies can go a long way. So I just want people to think of that in the future, and maybe this is a comment. I get to say these things because I'm retiring on April 3rd, and now I can start criticizing the county government and what's been going on. But it is an opportunity for forest lands and whatever else. In most counties, you know, and Anacortes isn't a county, we got to remember that too. It's just not unincorporated areas, but that gives us an opportunity to leverage those dollars for other funding opportunities. Just wanted to say that. Thanks.
That's entirely very true, and most definitely that's a comment for our county commissioner. You know, one thing I didn't put in the slides here, because there is so much that we are doing that doesn't fit on the slides, is that we will be adding several acres to the city limits this year, because last year we added to our urban growth area a bunch of parcels that the city owns that are thought of as part of the forest lands, but are not inside the city limits. So that is added to our urban growth area. That is the first step into incorporate those areas into the city. And that's important because then we can enforce our criminal laws everywhere throughout the forest lands. So you'll see that happening, but that actually will be pretty simple from this moment forward. Any other, go ahead. whoever it is.
I happen to have
You
this
have the mic.
thing.
Yeah.
So, I hear a lot of underlying concern about what is happening nationally, and I'd like to know what the city is thinking about in terms of our safety as a community and the safety of our neighbors. Should we have federal incursion of any kind, whether it's just small ice raids or if it were large events? You know, many of us are training for rapid response and those kinds of things, and I presume that you're thinking about these things and thinking about the role of our police department in regard to those possible incidences.
Yeah, that's, I think, a difficult question to answer because there's certainly lots of possibilities there. Obviously, Customs and Border Protection is here all the time, right? We have a port. So it depends on what particular scenario we're talking about. But our police department follows state law, and state law basically says the federal government is on its own to figure out how to enforce its immigration laws, and our job is not to do that job for them. Our job is to do the job we're paying the police to do, which is enforce our local and state laws. So we're doing that, and we'll continue to do that. If we've got a significant event here, we'll respond in the best way that we can at that time. But I can't tell you what that's going to look like, and I'm not going to encourage you to spin up a detailed hypothetical. But importantly, I think our police department is really very much on the same page with respect to the state law, and I know that our police chief, and I'll be informed, if we have visibility into something happening here in Anacortes, then we will figure it out as we go.
What I wanted to say at the beginning, and I forgot, was to thank you and the police force for the service they've been providing as we've had rallies. They've really been doing a great job of, I know it's an extra burden for them, but I also feel they've been really supportive and they've really kept people safe.
Well, we appreciate everybody. we appreciate everybody on all 4 corners of the intersection for keeping it civil, for crossing the street in a relatively quick fashion, for not blocking traffic, those kinds of things. There's just, there's no problem with people demonstrating and having free expression on the street corner. It doesn't matter if it's inconsistent with your views. That's part of the deal. Just stay on the street.
Hey, Ryan. Concerning the corner on 12th, I spend a couple hours a week there, and traffic lights, of course, like we said, they're in transition, right? You guys are gonna update the one side for sure by Johnson's Real Estate, right? That pole's gonna be changed, is that correct, for a new light exchange?
Yeah.
And the turn lane, so we have a lot of people going into the bike lane to take a right onto 12th. And then there's people in the other lane who are also taking a right onto 12th. And so we're watching some very near accidents happening. So the line, the roadway does not have a straight arrow and a turn arrow painted on it, so people don't know that it's a turn lane and a straight lane. So they're using the turn to the right in the bike lane like they have for years. And the third light, when you're looking southbound, which used to be the right turn onto 12th from Commercial, that third light confuses people because they think that's a lane still, where it used to be a turn lane. So where are we timeline-wise of getting all this resolved, I guess? That's my question. Because I'm tired of seeing, we really on Sunday had like 4 or 5 near accidents taking a right onto 12th.
So this is a troubled project. It's been troubled for years. As you might recall, it used to be more round. At least that was the design. So at one point we were designing a roundabout. For most of this project's lifespan, we were designing a roundabout. And the roundabout kept getting bigger because it had to be to accommodate big trucks.
Absolutely.
And it would have worked fine for big trucks. The problem was that it was gonna be $8 million or something like that. And we had a couple $1 million in grants. So there was a significant delta there that no one had a plan for. And so Councilmember Moulton and Councilmember Young and I on the Council Public Works Committee called a meeting and we're like, hey, how's this gonna work? We don't have $5 million, $6 million more dollars to fund this roundabout project. No offense to roundabouts, but where you have property acquisition involved, it was just going to get very expensive and it was unfunded. So we canceled that and we said, with the grant money that we have, we can improve the intersection with better lights. Apparently the lights that are there are some of the oldest traffic lights in the state. I'm not sure if I believe that, but that's what I've been told.
Sounds about right.
Someplace in Eastern Washington, you would think might have some older traffic lights, but, so they're not very efficient. If you've spent time at the corner of 12th and Commercial, you might notice that there's periods where just nobody is going through the intersection. And so we're hopeful that when those get replaced, we will get better modern traffic lights with not only the sensors that detect when a vehicle is waiting for the light to turn, but also the cameras that detect when there's no one else left in the lane, so then the light can turn the other way. And we've got some cameras there now. Apparently they were programmed incorrectly, and so they were causing some trouble. So anyway, we are really hoping that all of that gets figured out and that the lane reductions, where we no longer have turn lanes, do not cause delays, because our designers modeled this and they believe that we will still have an increase in throughput even with fewer lanes simply by having better traffic signals. That's the theory.
We'll
We
see.
really hope it works out. Now, if you're headed southbound and you're worried about the turn lane that no longer exists, that is going to be solved by finalization of some of the curb work that is in the plan that they haven't done yet. So you will no longer be able to get into the bike lane. And there's going to be a bunch of green paint that is coming to delineate the bike lanes. There's going to be these little mountable aprons which I thought we should call something else. They are going to be added to the roadway as well. So it's going to actually look a little bit different than even as it does now.
Will it
And
take,
that
In
is
the
coming.
meantime,
Will
can
it
we
take
do
as
the
long?
line? Can we do the arrows in the meantime, or is that and is this a Department of Transportation issue also with the lights, or is this all city?
That is a delay in acquiring the poles. They are on back order. So we currently think that April, May is when this
oh
gets
my
resolved.
God.
Which, actually isn't that far out. But, so there's also a bump at 11th Street that you may have noticed.
Yeah.
And who has noticed the bump? Right before? Okay, so that is a result of, they ripped up the pavement and they're gonna put down fresh pavement. You need to put down 3/10 of a foot of fresh pavement. You can't put down a little bit, you need to put down at least that much, so that it doesn't crack and those kinds of things. But you also need the stormwater to flow appropriately. And so they ran into trouble because beneath the pavement, and this is the entire length of South Commercial, there are concrete panels. And this is why WashDOT is not paving South Commercial, because these concrete panels mean that the roadway is not gonna fail. The pavement will get worse and worse, but the road won't degrade to the point where you don't have a road anymore. So, at 11th Street, part of the plan was to bring in grinders and grind down the cement so that we got enough depth so we could add 3/10 of a foot of pavement and then also still have the stormwater work. The problem is, in the concrete panels are random hunks of metal. And so when they were grinding these panels down, they were running into these hunks of metal, which was destroying the grinders, and so there were some game time decisions made in the field, and that yielded the hump. Yeah, so, we're not leaving it like that. I've asked Public Works to come up with a plan that would be a change order under this contract, and it's on 11th Street, or it's on Commercial, but at 11th, so we don't have to go through WashDOT for this. To cut out a section across the roadway there and re-pour it in cement, hopefully with a little brick pattern so that it would be also a visual indicator that there's a little elevation change there and that you are entering downtown. And please drive a little slower. So that's kind of the plan. We'll see how it shakes out because they've got to draw it and figure out if it works and everything. But we definitely, it's not acceptable to leave the bump like it is. There are other problems with this intersection too. We're gonna be working on those, but they almost certainly will not get resolved as part of this contract because WashDOT's gonna approve everything on their road. So we'll have to see where we land. But any other questions about 12th and
Will it take as
Commercial?
long as it took to do what they've done now? That was horrible trying to navigate that.
Well, I actually think that the pavement work didn't take that long.
Oh,
It was just all this other stuff.
okay.
Yeah, and you might see that on the sidewalk, there's asphalt instead of cement. That's because all that asphalt is gonna get torn up when they need to put in the new poles. And then it will get re-poured with cement.
And you're putting the pole back a little farther so the trucks can go around the corner, is that correct?
I couldn't tell you.
Maybe.
I don't know about that.
Are there any other questions?
I'll just say it. The large area that you have down in the waterfront in the city there, is that commercial area? If that were built, would that be sufficient revenue for the city at that point?
That's a great question. I'll repeat it for everybody else. The large vacant area on the waterfront,
Yeah.
this is commonly known as the MJB property.
Yeah.
If it were built, would that be sufficient revenue? So it would absolutely be more revenue. The big question is, so it'll be more property tax because that gets, new construction gets added to the tax roll, so that's a net benefit. It would also be more sales tax when construction occurs, and then it's real estate excise tax, which is not quite general revenue, but it helps us out a lot because it is allowed to be spent on all our maintenance stuff when buildings sell after they are initially constructed. So there's a lot of benefit there. The biggest part of that benefit is because it's inside the city limits. All the sewer infrastructure, all the road infrastructure, it's already there. Fire station's a couple blocks away, like everything's there. If we were talking about building new construction like this out of town and we were expanding our city limits to accommodate that, that might be a net drain. And so you have to consider that. The other important consideration there is, there's been some talk about one of the buildings there maybe being an assisted living facility. That's great, I think we probably have a need for that, however, that costs money, because it increases service demand, call volume. We have zoned that, we've zoned it for taller buildings. That is going to be, I think, a little shocking. But if it is to get developed, now would be a good time from the city's revenue perspective.
Hi, Ryan. I had a question. Wemus Channel Trail Planning, is that going to be a comprehensive look at the Wemus Channel Trail for planning instead of the piecemeal approach that's been taken in the past?
Yes, our plan has been to do an EIS, which would be an integrated environmental review and planning document. I really think that that is essential. It's especially essential to access federal money if we need federal money. And for me, I want to know how this is all going to come together. And if it's not going to all come together, then we need to do something else. If it is going to come all together, we need to see how that looks and evaluate the environmental effects at the same time, because that's a big component of it. And also the maintenance costs. The existing Wemus Channel Trail is generating some maintenance costs for us because it's pretty close to the shoreline and it gets washed out. We want to avoid that to the greatest extent that we can, so that might mean that the next sections are higher or further away or something else. But I mean, there's a lot to look at there, and you've got to have a survey and help you see where all the grades are and where your opportunities are. Generally, what we're talking about is following the railroad bed, so it's more or less laid out, but we got to see how that'll work.
Okay,
So, yeah.
thanks.
What's the timeline for that MJB property? And is there anything?
Well, so the MJB owners have applied for permits, and they've not gotten through the city process to get to a point where those permits have even moved forward for a decision on the permits yet. I think that there are some bottlenecks in the city process that need to be fixed. I think MJB probably could have done a little bit better job themselves on helping themselves get through that process, but some of it is also on the city. So we'll be working on that. My goal is for, first of all, for residential permitting, for like single-family residential, for 1 to 4 unit permitting. For those permits, if you are code compliant, to be turned around in less than 2 weeks. We're not there right now. So there's a whole bunch of measures that we got to do to accomplish that. Their project is not going to be that. It's going to be more multi-unit buildings. But fundamentally, you as an applicant have a right to have your application evaluated under the code. The code is the law, and so we need to make sure that we are treating all applicants fairly and equitably, and so we're going to make sure that we are doing that. But it's a complicated path from here to there. We'll keep you up to date along the way.
You waited long enough for this job. Are you enjoying it?
Well, I have a kid in daycare, so I've been sick twice in the past month. I think I enjoy when I see good news and good things happening, and occasionally that does happen.
Well, I personally enjoy having you in that office.
Well, thank you.
The lady that was sitting there.
Carrie
brought
Warren.
her bag.
I'd be very interested to hear about what the city is doing to promote more affordable housing in Anacortes.
That is a great question, and I love talking about housing. So one of the important things that we are doing is working with the county on the North Star project, and that's not just fluff, because All of us cities and the county are in this together. Resolving the housing crisis is a it's a nationwide problem, but it's locally here, it's a multi-jurisdictional problem. So one of the things that we've emphasized through the North Star project is that we need to achieve 4 measures, and by we mean Anacortes needs to do these things, Mount Vernon needs to do these things, Burlington and Cedar-Woolley, all 4 of the cities. And if I'm very good here, I'll remember all 4 of them. So the first is to enable residential development in commercial areas. And our proposal there doesn't go quite as far as the bill that's in the state legislature right now, because we would allow requiring commercial storefronts along, say, Commercial Avenue or other high-profile streets. But especially Mount Vernon has a very large commercial area that is underutilized commercially and needs to have some residential development in it. Burlington turned that on in their city a couple of years ago, and they are seeing tremendous residential development as a result. We also allow it already here in Anacortes. We're not really seeing it on the ground yet, but we allow it in terms of our development regulations. The second is to enable housing by right anywhere housing is allowed. So as an example, some cities like Anacortes historically required a conditional use permit for housing of more than 1 unit, so a duplex, a triplex, a multifamily development. The problem with that is that it takes a long time to process such a permit, and it increases a lot of uncertainty around whether or not you can get the permit. And a builder has a lot of upfront cost and investment that's required in order to even apply for such a permit. Plus then there's public hearings and a bunch of process. The process didn't generally yield a different result, except that people didn't even apply for the permits at all because of the uncertainty associated with them. So the second prong of the North Star housing call to action is to enable housing by right wherever housing is allowed. So we're not suggesting in this prong that you change what types of housing you allow, but where you are allowing it, enable it through a straightforward building permit process rather than a conditional use permit process. Anacortes, again, has accomplished that a couple of years ago, so we have fully complied with that, except for a couple of commercial areas, which is in an ordinance that is pending. Mount Vernon has some work to do there. Cedar-Woolley, I think, still has some work to do there, and I think Burlington is largely compliant with that. And then the other 2 items in our housing call to action are to reduce parking minimums for affordable housing and to reduce fees for affordable housing. And again, Anacortes has accomplished both of those items. We have a fee reduction program for a variety of types of affordable housing. It's pretty significant, actually. And then we also have reduced parking requirements for particular types of affordable housing. And we also have lower parking requirements overall compared to, again, a city like Mount Vernon, which recently had to adopt an emergency ordinance to reduce their parking requirement, because you could have to, in some places, if you wanted to build a house and 2 ADUs, you would have to provide 8 off-street parking spaces, which just consumes land. And especially here, we don't have that. But we have allowed, for accessory dwelling units, we have allowed no off-street parking requirement for quite a few years now, if you have on-street parking available. So that makes a big difference. We want to make sure there's spots for people to park, and we know that people are going to have cars. But if it comes down to a trade-off between providing places for people to sleep or places for cars to sleep, we really do need places for people to sleep. And we need to make it more affordable. We've been working since 2016, when we adopted the last version of our comp plan, to make a greater variety of sizes and types and styles of housing available in Anacortes. We've done some of that. Not all of it has been well received, but a lot of it has been, and a lot of it is in use by people that need it. So for example, a couple of years ago, we hired a new public works director, and he found housing in the 5-story building that nobody likes. But it was his only option.
That's not
And-
affordable.
And then,
Was that affordable?
well, it was affordable to the public works director, yes. Well, and actually, it's not too bad, because, you know, if you look at it a per square foot price, it's higher than other housing. However, if all you need is that, then it can be less expensive than some other housing. I don't have a slide for this, but if you need a one bedroom, there aren't any one bedroom houses out to go look at. So you're gonna get into a 3 or 4 bedroom house, and if you don't need that, then you can actually, in fact, pay less in the 5-story building for that, and that's part of the trade-off. But our fire chief, our last public works director, they lived or do live in some of the cottage housing that has been built around. So these new housing types that you've seen are generating housing for people that we want to really have housing in our community. Sometimes people talk about, well, we need to add more jobs in our community, and I'm all for adding jobs. However, we have a lot of jobs that employ people who live in Cedar-Woolley, because they can't afford to live here. And so when the bell rings, they fill up our avenue and head out of town. You know, the refineries were built by people who lived in Anacortes, and now something like 25% of their employees are able to live in Anacortes. A lot of those jobs are pretty good, but they're not quite good enough for somebody to go buy a house anew in town. I would struggle to buy my house if I had to buy it today. And so that's not a good position to be in. We need more families in town, and housing is really key to that. So we are working hard on that, and actually we are going to do a better job of communicating what we have been doing and what we are doing, and hopefully attract some new development.
So density is an issue, like
Do
we
we-
need more density on the land that we have, right?
It's basically the only way to achieve it, right? Yeah, more density in at least certain areas. It's not gonna happen everywhere, it doesn't have to. But especially on Commercial Avenue, especially on our avenue, we're gonna see that, and it's our job to make sure that it works well.
Something beside, Quim just pointed out that the school levy is passing 52% at this point.
Oh, great.
Thank you for checking, that's good news.
Pretty close.
Oh, do you know what's going on at the old bowling alley site? Is that gonna be housing?
Yeah, so the bowling alley was sold a number of years ago by a person from Cedar-Woolley.
I think that was your outro.
Anyway, they eventually turned around and sold it again. So now it's owned by Nell Strandberg. And he is considering doing a multifamily project there. I don't know when that's actually gonna happen. You know, a big factor in these larger buildings is that they are more risky. You know, there's more capital at stake, there's more involved in constructing them. And so part of our job, I think, is to make them less risky, increase the level of certainty so that we actually see some of them constructed. And again, I think Commercial Avenue is the best place for that. Historically, we had some significant height on Commercial Avenue, we still do. You know, the Majestic is basically 5 stories tall. And so we're gonna see more of that, and especially in our downtown, north of 12th Street, that I think has a lot of potential to really enliven our downtown. More people living in our downtown would be beneficial. Already you see the effects of people living in Old Town adjacent to the downtown. I mean, a lot of people walk back and forth to our downtown shops and restaurants, and more of that, I think, is highly desirable for us.
Is there an architectural overview for what the buildings can look like?
So we, actually under state law, there are pretty significant constraints on that now. But in our code, we have design standards.
Okay.
So there's not like an architectural committee, and there really can't be anymore. But there are design standards. We adopted those in 2019. Now they may not go as far as you might like. And actually you can browse the code, and there's photos of things that we want to see, things that we don't want to see with a line through them. And so it's fairly accessible to look through and see if you're seeing what you want, and we can make changes. But they do help, I think, stop some of the worst offenders, but not all of them. So
Where do we
take a
go,
look.
where do we go to see that?
If you go to the city website,
Okay.
you want to look for the municipal code. It'll be
Okay.
under the government tab. And then Title 19 is the development code. And if you start clicking around in there, you'll find the design standards section.
I have a question. So, from what I understand, the retail brings in more because of the sales tax than does property tax overall. Was that's were you kind of saying that in the beginning, right?
Property tax brings in more.
Oh, property tax does, but it doesn't keep up with inflation.
Right.
So if you're having more residential development in the commercial district, are you going to make sure that commercial interests aren't competing against residential for land space?
That's a good consideration. Right, yeah, so under the state law that is pending, I don't know what its current status is with amendments, but under the state law, you have to enable residential, and you can't require commercial, and that is inconsistent with what we're currently doing. Our code requires commercial on Commercial Avenue, but it allows single-purpose residential on the side streets, and we currently think that that's enough. Like, we're not hurting for commercial space. Ideally, you would require the first floor of all buildings in a commercial zone to be constructed such that they could be commercial spaces.
Right.
Because if you construct them with lower ceiling heights that are more residential in nature, it's a little difficult to say, well, we're gonna convert it to commercial in the future. Achieving that flexibility on the first floor would be ideal. We don't quite require that. But it is important to think about that. It's a good consideration. I'm not sure we're 100% hitting the mark on that, but we also don't have a shortage right now of commercial space.
The area up at Sharp's Corner, the city put in quite a bit of money into kind of laying out some infrastructure there. Is there any discussion about using that for anything?
Well, we've had discussions. We've also asked.
Would you repeat the question?
Oh, sure. The question is about Sharp's Corner. The city owns some 40 acres at Sharp's Corner. A lot of that acreage is not very buildable. There are wetlands, there are steep slopes. There's also a natural gas transmission pipeline, which ideally would have a significant setback from it. So there are some significant constraints there. There are a number of building pads that were constructed, I don't know, pre-2010, somewhere in there. But they're not large because of the topography. So we did have a consultant look at that, and they identified some wetlands, but they didn't do a wetland delineation. So we didn't quite get to the answer. So we've asked for the wetland delineation to now be done so that we know with certainty where the wetlands are, and then we can figure out how much space there is there. And we've talked about using that for residential development. However, it's generally not very desirable to create residential development disconnected from all the services. I mean, it's kind of adjacent to a bus line, but that's not as desirable as building that kind of stuff closer in to our downtown core. So at the moment, I am thinking, I think that we are basically still in a wait and see approach until we find out that wetland delineation. And then we may have some discussions possibly about some commercial or industrial development there. Because there is a need for more commercial industrial land. And some of that might be an ideal location for that compared to in closer to our residential areas.
What's going on with, I think it's the Eagles Hall?
The Eagles Hall, what's happening with that? I think the answer is nothing. The Eagles, I understand, moved out of it because of concerns about the building and cost of insurance. I think a lot of us would like to see the Eagles building preserved, because it's a significant building, and it's not a wood building, you know, it has the ability to be preserved and be pretty functional. I understand it has an elevator shaft in it, but not an elevator. You know, the lack of an elevator, if you had to retrofit an elevator onto a building, that would be a significant expense, it'd be weird, and without it, you might not have a very functional building for a lot of things. So there's I have a lot of questions in my mind. I've had a couple of conversations with people about it. I feel very confident the city is not going to say it. But we will do whatever we can to, I think, to facilitate that. If somebody wants to come up with the money to renovate it and has a plan for how it might be used.
Yeah, along those lines, what is the role of tourism in the overall plan to encourage investment and funding, capital inflow? It seems to me that the city is going in several directions at the same time. We've got some of the things that make this city unique and interesting are being destroyed in the old buildings. The Olson building is going to be torn down, and the hardware store is going. And at the same time, in the history, we fought to get the Preston. And the Preston is almost a secret now because it's tucked away off to the side of commercial, and I don't see any real effort to make people aware that it's even there. And so where are we with those things?
Well, I think with respect to the Preston and with respect to the Depot, which is a very old building and one that really is a success story with respect to preservation, you're going to see the profile of that area really raised with the development of the West Basin, Cap Santa Marina, the event center, the new plaza for the farmers market, and the road realignment that's going to happen as part of that whole thing. There's going to be a more gentle curve from 9th Street to R than there is now. And so you're going to see better access, more visibility, better sight lines. We may develop better sight lines and signage down 7th Street, so if you're on Commercial, you would look down there and you would be able to see the depot. I think there's a lot of potential for that. And part of your question was, you think the city is doing several different things at once? I think that's true, and I think that's a virtue, not a vice. I don't think, in my mind at least, I don't think we want to be a tourist community. I think we want to be a great place for tourists to come to, but we want to be a whole community, not a bedroom community, but a whole community that also has a great school district, great hospital, great place for people to live, and hopefully to live where they work. So that's my vision for it, and I think tourism has a good role to play. I mean, we are still the gateway to the San Juan Islands.
Right.
Hopefully eventually the gateway to Sydney, DC again as well. And we've got a lot going for us in our downtown that we want to keep propped up. So I think with respect to the historical buildings, some of those are a bigger challenge than others. If you look at the Plaque building, that is a great building that we've got a successful landowner invested in, and they are preserving that building. And that's a success story. The Wilson Hotel, which the Housing Authority and the city assisted with renovation a number of years ago now, probably 20 plus years ago, that is another success story. So Marine Supply is almost certainly going to be torn down, and I'm going to be sad about that. I toured it the other day. I spent a lot of time in that building growing up, mostly following my dad around while he looked for the perfect screw, nut, or bolt. But also showing Themo in the cage there how to use QuickBooks when they got their first computer at Marine Supply. So Marine Supply is going to go. Now the Olson building I think is also going to go, but the Olson building is going to be put back. The Housing Authority owns the Olson building. Our original plan as part of our affordable housing program was to renovate that. But the cost of preserving even just the facade is so expensive and it drives up the cost per unit that it's really hard to justify. So the current plan instead is to tear down the Olson building to preserve a lot of the stuff that's inside of it, but then to put it back and make it look like it did before, although a little taller. And it's gonna have more units, and it's gonna have a lower cost per unit than other strategies. And I'm pretty hopeful that although we will lose some buildings over time, that we are able to reinvest in buildings that do stand the test of time, that are able to be preserved long-term. Wood buildings are pretty hard that way, and I think Marine Supply suffers from that. And if you have the opportunity to take a tour, it is pretty obvious that there's just so much money that would need to go into that building. But others, I think we have a good chance at. The Majestic, another great example. I mean, I can name a number of counterexamples to that. The Majestic, I guess, actually, in fact, used to sit on K Avenue and was moved to Commercial Avenue. And it's been remodeled over time, and whatever you think of its little cousin that sits next to it. I mean, they are really investing, and they're trying, and not everybody gets it right. I would love for us to be as old as some other communities, you know, like Port Townsend. So I did introduce, as part of our comprehensive plan update last year, a proposal to eventually adopt some code that would prohibit demolition by neglect, which is something Port Townsend has in there. Basically, the idea that you can get to a point where a building is in such rough shape because you have neglected it over time that it has to be torn down. That's where we end up with some of these. And so if we can take some preventative measures, maybe we can do that. That may not be an entirely satisfactory answer, but.
Okay, it looks like we're getting towards the end. It's almost 9 o'clock. So I think if we have more questions for both Ryan and for Joe, you might want to get on their websites and ask them what you want to know. There's lots and lots more stuff that I'm sure people want to know about. So thank you all for coming. It was a wonderful turnout, and I thank you, Ryan, thank you, Joe, and thank you.